We kick off our list by identifying the conditions within which the explosion that became the June 4th revolution occurred. Now, we've provided a highlight of the event itself, but it would be criminal if number one on our list wasn't about the long-term decline and fault lines that made a revolution in 1979 not only possible, but practically inevitable. Number one in our top 10 things you may not know about Ghana's June 4th revolution. What really caused the revolt? There is no smoke without fire. Number 1. 13th January 1973.
Dr. Busia and his Progress Party plunged the country into another orgy of corruption, ran up huge debts, and split the country politically. They suspended the constitution and set opposing tribes at each other's throats.
Colonel Ignatius Kutu Achampong seizes power from Prime Minister Kofi Abrifo-Busia in a bloodless coup with a centrist political leaning but socialist pretensions. Achampong's military council calls itself the National Redemption Council. It might seem alien to us today, but Ghanaians in the 70s were fed up with a Western-prescribed so-called multi-party system of democracy, with its divisiveness and abusive excesses. After an initial good run with Achampong, some might have been open to entertain the possibility of military-led government as a favorable alternative. At the time, the military seemed to have an efficient and no-nonsense approach about them. Squabbling civilian politicians simply did not. By October 9th, 1975, with a gradual reopening of the market, an influx of money and foreign business, Achampong reorganizes the leadership of the NRC into what becomes the Supreme Military Council, with more power concentrated in himself. Something has changed. Corruption quickly creeps into state affairs. Achampong rapidly promotes himself to the rank of general and appears to be running a one-man show. The pervasive military presence, once comforting, suddenly becomes oppressive. The allegations that Achampong gives his numerous girlfriends VW Golf vehicles in exchange for sexual favors. Some of them are even provided unfair access to business contracts. Rumors abound about the houses and monies Achampong has stashed away overseas. Protests and demonstrations are frequent, often put down brutally by the military. In Nungua, for instance, soldiers under the Chief of Army Staff Major General Robert Cote, a leading figure in the SMC, intervene on the behest of the Nungua chief. Such a use of military force in support of a local leader is unprecedented. With naked abuse of power at the highest level, the average citizen desperate from the plunging standards of living, the rot of corruption spreads like a canker through the fabric of Ghanaian society. With the right connection and of course dimensions, it's easier to make it ahead in an increasingly corrupt system than it is to struggle through a bureaucracy meant specifically to frustrate law-abiding citizens. A new crop of elites and businessmen, many of them Syrians and Lebanese, benefit off their close relationship with members of the SMC, unchecked and above the law. In the universities, lecturers have taken to targeting attractive female students, holding their grades ransom, coercing them for sexual favors. Powerless to such moral bankruptcy and without justice, an animosity grows within the student population for those in position of authority, both in the university and within the SMC government itself. The armed forces are not spared the rot. Within the black market, timber is smuggled across the Ivorian border, an open secret, a scandal, for which the border guard's commander, Major General Edward Utuka, another leading figure in the SMC, is widely considered the chief culprit, with the military structure shifting from one of discipline and merit-based tradition to one of an elitist master-follower relationship based on subservience, disrespect, cronyism, all the while deepening resentment within the lower ranks for the predominantly corrupt commanders. In the senior ranks, the integrity of commanders who still maintain any professional ethics is seen as a threat to a fragile leadership now focused on self-preservation. Afraid that such people would inspire defiance among the common ranks, such commanders are reassigned out of their units. Many resign. The military uniform, once a symbol of pride for the common soldier, is now seen as something that inspires hate by civilians. Within the systemic corruption and incompetence, a new kind of Makola trader emerges with special relationship with the leadership and special access to goods coming into the country. These traders have the local market in a stranglehold.
Then everything was monopolized. I remember our basic food like beans and gari was only sold. I remember at that time Malata was sold by one woman. One, believe you me, one person was selling that, only one.
There was no soap. Just bathing soap, there was none. Toothpaste, there was none. Nothing. No food.
They hoard essential commodities and sell them up to 10 times the original price. To acquire these basic goods, everyone joins the unending queues for hours, even days. This aspect of corruption comes to be known as kalabule. It comes to represent the face of corruption under Champong's regime. Makula traders involved in kalabule treats the lower ranks with a special kind of contempt. With access to the top, some of these women go as far as interfering with command and control, recommending punitive measures against lower-ranked soldiers that go against them. There are reported instances where a fully uniformed soldier had urine flung at them from piss pots and empty cans used by these market women. These rumors develop resentment for market women by the lower ranks, and ultimately towards their corrupt and incompetent military leadership who have put them in so contemptible a position. In a failing state, the problems of the economy, the challenges are more oppressive towards the average Ghanaian and the elites with access to the top echelon. Whether in the civilian or military hierarchy, the fault lines create a class struggle. With mounting pressure to hand over power, numerous attempts to overthrow him widely known, Achampong attempts ineffectively to transition the country into a unified government or unigov between military and civilian rule, by way of a referendum held on 30th March of 78. It is all too late. Ghanaians want the SMC regime gone completely. The referendum is poorly patronized, and the backlash emboldens a group of senior officers within the SMC who see Achampong as a dangerous liability. They remove him in July 5th, 78. Stripped of any and all military credentials, General Achampong becomes Mr. Achampong. The group that carries out the bloodless palace coup are led by General Fred William Kwesi Akufu, Sandhurst trained and politically right-leaning. He immediately gets to work preparing the country for a transition to constitutional rule and a democratic election slated for late June 1979. Anxious to get out of the powder keg they have created, the SMC2 fails to reconcile 7 years of unresolved issues: corruption in the officer corps, brutal repression, kalabule. No effort is made to arrest the plunging morale of the lower ranks. Nothing is done to rehabilitate the battered reputation of the armed forces as a way of stemming the heat welling from beneath them. Reprinted in 1978, John Donne's political analysis, West African States, Failure and Promise, has this to say about the Ghanaian socio-political scene. A country in which the fall in the real value of the minimum wage over the last decade and a half has been one of the steepest in the world, a full 50% between 1963 and 1974, for example, in which the annual inflation rate at the beginning of 1977 was estimated at over 50%, is subjecting its existing pattern of social relations to considerable strain. Even the most elastic mode of reproducing social relations can, under some conditions, simply snap. Nor is it clear that the process will even be permitted to continue indefinitely without external interruption. The country continues to hurtle towards a bloody day of reckoning like a runaway train, yet the leadership of SMC2 is oblivious.
The takeover was occasioned principally by the hypocrisy of the Busia regime. Matters got steadily worse, especially in the economic field, and it became obvious that the Busia government had no clue as to how to arrest the position